minutes on momentum changers. Let's welcome Brian. Wow, I've been sitting there thinking I never should have given up that first spot and gone after those two guys. Here we are, right? Momentum changers. Actually, it's nice to be in a free kind of. It's a first for me, and I'll probably take advantage of it. So I apologize now. Momentum changers. When I think of those, I think about Jimmy Johnson, the 90s Cowboys. There's a lot about momentum changers and special teams, right? If you can do this one little thing that kind of sucks the wind out of the other team, all of a sudden you've gained an advantage. I think more recently in some recent college games about fake punts. The punter standing back there, he takes the snap, and everybody's just kind of waiting for the ball to come sailing, and somebody breaks out around the end and he throws a pass. And there are a couple of things about momentum changers that are important here and that will apply to a couple of stories I'll tell you here in a minute. One of them is that you got to commit. On the front end, you make a commitment. Hey, when I get that, I'm not going to punt it. And as soon as he takes about that second step, it's too late to punt. The second thing is, once you commit, you've got to go at it wholehearted. You can't hold back. So a lot of times what will happen in that fake punt scenario, that guy suddenly goes from a punter who's very protected to a semi-quarterback and he's probably going to get tackled. But the real beauty of that commitment is he's probably going to get tackled anyway, so you might as well make it count. And a couple of ways that, a couple of momentum, some momentum changers that I've had through my life. One of them, actually the first one, well, probably wasn't the first one, but the first kind of big one was getting married. And there's that commitment on the front end. You don't sort of work into, right, I'm kind of a journeyman husband. And I'll be, at some point I'm a master husband. My wife will probably tell you I'm not there yet, but maybe, hopefully it's coming. But you go and you make that commitment on that day, and you leave that ceremony, and you've gone from not a husband to a husband. And I'll tell you, I resisted that commitment for a long time. My wife and I dated for about 7.5 years before we got married. But we started dating when we were 16, so maybe that was the right thing. But it really sort of dramatically changed the direction that we were moving as a couple, and especially the direction I was moving as a guy. The second big one for me was I have 2 children, like that told you in the introduction, but that first one, and you guys are getting close to that, Jeremy's close to that too. That first one is, man, that is a moment. That is way bigger than that fourth down punt where you throw a pass. I mean, it changes life. It changes your perspective on many things, and really makes you sort of willingly give up a lot more than you would otherwise. I remember, and actually it was kind of close to the marriage stuff, right? It's sometimes people just get pregnant. When my wife and I did not, and we did not for a very long time, a long enough time that it became troubling for us. But we, just kind of keep pushing on, and maybe we got to a point where it kind of accepted. Well, maybe that's just not what's in store for us. And so made some other commitments, bought a house. That first mortgage payment, when that first mortgage payment was due, guess what? My wife was pregnant. So there again, everything kind of shifts. And for me, though it was a long process to get there, for me it was, when we were at the hospital and through the delivery, it went almost like the marriage. I went from not a dad to a dad, which is a whole much different than a punter to a quarterback, right? Changed perspective for me on a great many things. And then the third one that happened, that first child, that's my son Colton. He's 14 now, almost 15. And when he was 10, a little after his 10th birthday, actually actually right around his 10th birthday, we sort of started figuring out, my wife's a therapist and has kind of a medical background. For me, anytime I go to the doctor's office, I don't have a clue what they're talking about. I mean, it's, they talk about all these body systems and functions, and either I turn to her and say, I don't know what he just said, or I just have to stop him 100 times and go, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. But around the time he was 10, Colton started having some reflex issues. He just didn't have the same reflexes he had before. When he was in second grade, he was the fastest kid in second grade. They used to play this game called Monkey Bar Wars, where they would hang on the monkey bars in the playground, and it's like King of the Mountain. You wrestle the other guys off while you try to stay hanging. And Colton was the king of the monkey bars. I was like, there it is, right? That's my Heisman. But anyway, when he was about 10, he just started getting a little slower, and his spine was a little bit crooked. And my wife's medical background, she picked up on that right away. I was like, oh, no, he's just, he's slouching, or everything's fine. As it turned out, he had kind of a narrowing in his spinal column up in his neck that, actually, if you remember when Michael Irvin stopped playing football because he had a narrowing in his spinal column, very similar situation. I don't think Michael had surgery. Colton had to have surgery. And actually, it's interesting that you're here this morning because we had surgery the week of Christmas at Cook's. And if you have to go to the hospital, most of you are too old, but if your kids have to go to the hospital, it's the best place in the world to go. We had, over that week, I don't know how many people that I don't know came and fed us, just because they're there and it's the holidays and they're trying to make it more, more palatable, really. But we had Santa Clauses come about every 2 hours. we got to the point where when Colton had the surgery, we got to the point where someone would knock on the door and I'd go open the door and I'd turn, I'd go, it's Santa, and he'd be like, but anyway, I could probably talk this story for hours, and I know you guys all have work to go to and other things to do at some point today. But the point of it is, we were at a point in there where we really didn't know what it was, and then we found out what it was and what it was going to take to fix it. And there's kind of this numbness that goes with that. And so, as the leader of my family, I had to decide we're gonna get this fixed. It's a big deal. It's weird when your 10-year-old has a neurosurgeon, but we made that commitment, and he, for several months there, suffered with the recovery of that. But in that recovery and in that suffering, I saw character developing in him, which I think will help him. I'm sure it's helped him since then. The year after that, actually they came and took orders. What are your kids like? What would they like for Christmas? And a lot of my kids' Christmas presents based on that. And the year after that, Colton wrote a letter to a bunch of our friends and got gathered about $400 in donations to buy presents for other kids. Sorry, since it's been 5 years ago, it was a big deal. But anyway, we made that commitment, and we went after it, getting it fixed. And in doing that, really realized the benefit. I mean, it was a fourth down where we converted. So I guess really the point of that is what are you committed to? Because that's where you're going to go. And sometimes you just have to go for it a fourth down.